Welcome back. History made in Washington this week. Donald J. Trump becoming the third president in U.S. history to face charges of high crimes and misdemeanors. The House voted last night along party lines, Democrats sealing the president's legacy with impeachment. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi still has not sent the articles over to the Senate. Abuse of power and obstruction of Congress expected to go to the Senate for trial. She said, wait, we want to see more about clarity in terms of what a Senate trial will look like. Joining me right now is the Senate Judiciary Committee member, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. And Senator, it is good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be with you.
First, give me your reaction to last night.
Well, I wish that the articles of impeachment weren't going forward because the Constitution says treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. And the president hasn't been accused of any of that. So I'm kind of surprised the constitutional basis for impeachment. But it's also got a political element, and this is very much a political element, that they don't like this president being elected in the first place. On the day he was sworn in, January 20th, 2017, the headlines of the paper said there's a movement to impeach the president. Yeah. Well, finally, that has come about.
This has been going on a long time, you're right. And in terms of impeachment, you had virtually all of the Democrats in line, although 2 no's and a third no on one article and one present by Tulsi Gabbard. Look, this morning, Senator, there are reports that Nancy Pelosi is going to hold back the articles of impeachment before sending them to the Senate as a negotiation tactic. She said she wants to make sure that there's a fair trial before she sends the articles. As a senator, what do you say about that?
She wants to make sure that there's a fair trial. She's saying that they did not give the president a fair hearing in the House of Representatives, and she wants the Senate to do the House's work. I don't understand that. Now, we do negotiate substances of bills, but we don't negotiate how the Senate doesn't pretend to negotiate with the House how they do their business. They should not be negotiating with us how to do our business. It's very unfair to the president. The president is entitled to a speedy trial just like anybody else, and we ought to be moving forward to it. And I think it shows that they had a very weak case in the House of Representatives. And what do they want to do? They want the Senate to clean up what they didn't do in the House of Representatives.
But is this allowed? I mean, Kevin McCarthy a minute ago was in your seat, and he said, well, she's not allowed to do that. That would be an abuse of power. How long can she sit on these articles of impeachment before handing them over to the Senate legally?
Legally, not at all, but politically, as long as she can get away with it. You know, don't forget in March, she said that impeachment's so important, it's got to be bipartisan. You got to have a good basis for it. This wasn't bipartisan, and they don't have a constitutional basis for impeachment of treason, bribery, etc.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. How long does this go? Lay out for us what a Senate trial will look like. Do you want to see witnesses?
I'll answer that question for you after we do what we did in the Clinton case. First of all, I don't think we need witnesses, but right now we ought to open it and hear the prosecution from the House of Representatives. We ought to hear the president's defense, and at that point you would see about witnesses.
What witnesses would you want to hear from?
I don't want to hear from any of them.
Okay.
I want to
Because the president said Hunter Biden, Joe Biden,
well,
Adam Schiff, he said the whistleblower. I'm wondering if this is any important to you.
What I want to do is determine whether or not the 2 articles of impeachment that the House of Representatives sent over are a legitimate reason for putting this president out of office, and I'm going to measure it against the Constitution.
All right, let me move on to the Grassley-Graham memo, and that outlined the FISA abuse back in January of 2019. This is important, and you wrote it all out in January of 19, and the Nunes memo a year earlier was spot on, we learned from the IG report, even though Adam Schiff said it was not at the time, and he said that he needed to correct the memo. We had more fallout from the Inspector General's report on the FBI FISA abuse yesterday. FBI officials and the mainstream media were quick to celebrate the IG report, saying that it did not find any political bias. In fact, that was wrong. Michael Horowitz fired back in Senate testimony yesterday. Let's watch this.
Was it your conclusion that there was that political bias did not affect any part of the Page investigation, any part of Crossfire Hurricane? Is that what you concluded?
Reach that.
Because I could have sworn, in fact, I know for a fact that I've heard that today from this committee, but that's not your conclusion?
We have been very careful in connection with the FISAs for the reasons you mentioned to not reach that conclusion.
So, I mean, what a bunch of smoke and mirrors. The day after the IG report, that's all the media reported, that there was no political bias. When we all knew, those of us who knew the story cold, like myself, by the way, knew that, of course, there was political bias. Your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, this is the one aspect of the Horowitz report that I disagree with. And I disagree with it because I got all that email between Page and Strzok and a lot of other people and not only that, but even before the election, having some recollection that we can't let this guy...
We want an insurance policy.
Yeah, and all that stuff. So that's what I disagree with, but I do compliment Horowitz because he got a lot of stuff out there that the FBI and Comey were wrong. They weren't doing their job, and we needed to have we need some reform of the FBI process. And Judge Collier yesterday stated a lot of things that the FBI's got to change their procedure, asking for a FISA request, and there's just got to be a lot of changes. And
by the way, I'm with Trey Gowdy on this because I don't think you need a new procedure to tell the FBI, guess what, you're not allowed to alter a document that's going to go to the FISA court. That's not a procedure change. That's get the personnel out.
You get disbarred for that.
Right.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened with this guy Kleinsmith, who changed an email to Carter Page was a CIA informant. Carter Page was not a CIA informant. That was ridiculous.
You know what has to happen here, not just with the gentleman you mentioned, debarment, but heads got to roll or nothing in Washington ever changes.
Will people go to jail on this?
Well, you're going to have to wait till Durham gets done. The U.S. Attorney Connecticut operating under Barr's authority, then we'll make that, we'll have to wait till then.
Your colleagues, you and your colleagues, Senator Lindsey Graham and Ron Johnson, want to interview Obama administration officials as part of an investigation into Vice President Biden's son's involvement with the Ukrainian natural gas company. We know that Hunter Biden was paid $50,000 or $60,000 a month, right, working for Burisma. We also know that Hunter Biden traveled with Joe Biden, then vice president, to China on Air Force Two, came back and actually got $1 billion in his fund. What do you want? Do you think you'll ever get that opportunity to interview them?
We're going to have to try because you follow the facts where they lead you, and we go to the reports that we've had and what we know, but we don't know everything. And so I can't really answer your question until we get to that point. But one thing that irritates me about this whole process, everybody says you want to look into this. It's been debunked already. How do you know whether it's been debunked until you get the investigation done?
Yeah, you've been incredibly efficient and detailed in terms of the Office of Net Assessments and what Stefan Halper was being paid. I'm going to talk with you about that on Sunday Morning Futures, and we appreciate you joining me in a couple of weeks on that to go through Stefan Halper and what he was doing running into Carter Page as an informant. But you're also focused on drug pricing legislation. Real quick, what is the bill?
Okay, well, this bill is one that saves the taxpayers $100 billion. It has a cap on the amount of money that any one person pays for drugs. It will make sure that we do away with the donor hole in the Part D, that senior citizens have to pay more money. We're taking away the perverse incentives to sell the highest priced drug because people get rewarded for selling the highest priced drug. We want to get generics on the market faster. And the most important thing is we want to have a year-over-year cap on the amount of price increase in drugs. We do not set the price of drugs. We'll let the pharmaceutical companies recapture their research and everything else they have going into the cost of getting that on the market. And then when that's done, then they shouldn't do a price increase of more than inflation.
Well, this is a really important bill. Senator, it's good to have you.
It's what the president wants. It's one of the most important goals. He talked about it last night in Battle Creek.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chuck Grassley. We'll be right back.